What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
But not quite. Lada X-Ray. Let's start with a car that is considered to be domestic, although this is not quite true. This car is built on the B0 platform, and its closest relative is not some Vesta or Granta, but Renault Sandero. However, there are many differences between these cars, so we will talk about Sandero separately. Our budget is enough to buy even the newest cars released in 2022. However, this does not mean that you need to find the freshest copy, buy it and find happiness. Happiness with X-Ray will have to be found in a slightly different way, by choosing the right units. But first, a few words about the body and interior. As the cars of the last years of production are not too old, corrosion is not to be feared. But some paintwork defects are likely to be noticeable. For example, chrome peeling off on the front bumper. Or chips, which appear relatively easily. True, X-Ray does not rust quickly, so you can paint the problem places and drive quietly for several years, not thinking about rust. The main disadvantage of the saloon is its size. It is not only narrow, but also does not please with space for legs of rear passengers. Someone may not like the equipment, which in X-Ray even in the most expensive versions has never been rich. There is no cruise control, armrest between the front seats, a plafond of illumination at rear passengers. Yes, and plastic of interior. Looks cheap, it is necessary to be ready for it. Though it should be noted that it is rather difficult to scratch this plastic, it turned out to be strong, though not pretty in appearance. On the plus side, noise insulation is not bad by class standards. And now let's return to motors. There were unexpectedly many of them: 1.6-litre VAZ 21129, 106 horsepower, 1.8-litre VAZ 21179, 122 horsepower, and 1.6-litre H4M, 113 horsepower. Strangely enough, the best motor is the weakest VAZ 21129. It is not necessary to expect outstanding dynamics from B-class hatchback in any case, so it is better to choose a simple but reliable engine. Especially against the background of the fact that 1.8-litre VAZ 21179 has an enviable oil appetite, and H4M from Renault Nissan also regularly suffers from this disease. There is one more reason to avoid cars with a foreign motor: it was paired with a Variator Jetco JF015E, and the cost of its repair now easily exceeds 200,000 rubles. The situation is aggravated by the fact that a bundle of this motor and box was used in the Cross version of X-Ray, and Cross and Variator are simply incompatible. In addition to the JF015E, the X-Ray has another unfortunate gearbox, the VAZ 2182 VAZ Robot. On the one hand, its late revision with the index 21827 works much more adequately than the first versions with the index 21826, and the software of these robots VAZ updated regularly. But on the other hand, clutch life is still low and repair cost is high. The other boxes are manual 5-speed boxes VAZ 21809, Renault JH3 and Junior 5. There are no claims to them. Of course, the VAZ box howls on the move, but everyone has long been used to it and does not pay attention to it. If this box did not howl, then yes, it would be unusual. The most trouble-free variant of X-Ray, with a VAZ engine with power of 106 horsepower paired with VAZ manual gearbox. Unfortunately, Renault gearboxes were not paired with this motor, but the car did not become much worse. Foreign, but not quite. Renault Sandero 2. As we said above, the closest relative of the X-Ray is the second-generation Renault Sandero. However, this kinship has not prevented the cars from being different. The Sandero will not appeal to those who need a large trunk. Fans of serious loading are better to look at X-Ray. The trunk is small both at one and at the second, but all the rear overhang it. X-Ray is a little more, so the volume of the trunk it also has more, 361 litres against 320 at Sandero. And for someone it is really important. For example, if the car in a family is one and in it is necessary to carry children with a baby stroller which occupies half of a trunk. Here every litre will be important. Well, the quality of assembly and body coloring of Sandero is not better than that of X-Ray. Paintwork is also delicate, and so much so that on the arches of some cars you can already find the consequences of sandblasting. And those that are often driven on highways, the hoods can be covered with chips. The interior of the second-generation Sandero is not as depressing as the interior of the first-generation cars, but there's not much cause for exuberant joy there either. Simple, modest, but everything necessary for life is there. By virtue of a small age, for our money you can buy even cars of the last years of release, 2021 and 2022, any serious breakdowns do not have to wait. If the X-Ray had Vazov motors, the Sandero certainly does not. All motors are Renault, and all of them are not bad in their own way. True, the same H4M, 113 horsepower, which we talked about in the section about X-Ray on Sandero has a similar ailment, increased oil appetite. Another not the most successful engine, 1.2-litre D4F with an output of 75 horsepower. It is too weak for this car, and there are problems with spare parts for it. During restyling this engine was abandoned, and there are almost no cars with such units on the secondary market. The overwhelming majority of hatchbacks are presented with 1.6-litre K7M, 82 horsepower, and K4M, 102 horsepower. Both motors are not bad, although 82 horsepower is also a little bit for Sandero. Besides, this engine is noisy. That said, it is also resourceful and inexpensive to maintain. What the Sandero was not lucky with was the automatic gearboxes. There were two of them, not very successful Robot EZR and hydromechanical automatic DP2. Despite the fact that the Robot is very similar to our Vazovsky AMT, both there and their 2ZF actuators were attached to the mechanical box, leaving a single-disc clutch. The resource of its clutch is complained about much less often. However, the French Robot can twitch in traffic jams and get confused in gears no worse than ours. Besides, this box does not enjoy love in our country, so it will be difficult to sell a car with this transmission. If you really want two pedals, it is better to choose a car with a classic DP2 automatic. Yes, it is slow, has only 4 gears, but rumors about its unreliability are greatly exaggerated. The earlier DP0 box did break down often, but DP2 is already rid of such problems, first of all, with a torque converter, and its 200 to 250,000 kilometers will pass. However, its repair, which used to be considered budgetary, is not called such now, and the complete reassembly of this box can cost about 250,000 rubles. However, when buying a young car, you should not think about it yet. For 1.5 million you can buy a Sandero with minimal mileage and in very good condition. Well, those who want to minimize all risks, you can safely recommend a car with any manual box. They are all reliable. The main thing is to keep an eye on the condition of the left dust cover sleeve of the hinge joint. If it breaks, the box may lose all oil at once. There are no other problems with it. The triumph of technology, Volkswagen Polo VR budget allows us to buy not only a domestic car or a not very prestigious Renault, but also a real thoroughbred German in the person of Polo of the 5th generation. Though, of course, only a complete optimist can take this car with 1.2-litre engine and stick a silhouette of Nürburgring on its stern. Polo is a little older than the previous two. The youngest copies were released in 2017. There are, however, for our money grey cars of the next generation, released for the Chinese market, which can be brought under the order. We will not consider them, such offers are few, and you will not be able to see them before buying anyway. Our budget is enough for quite decent Polo 2013 to 2014 year of release with familiar to us motors and boxes, and it will be a better and safer choice. But when inspecting the body, you need to pay attention at least to the rear door. On it unexpectedly met corrosion even on almost new cars. Paint on the sills and fender arches can peel off. The paintwork is not very firmly fixed on the body, and sometimes a chip is enough to start peeling. It is usually nothing critical, but you can use such defects as a reason for bargaining. The interior is traditionally for Volkswagen austere and laconic, and to some it may even seem boring. But everything is made qualitatively. Materials are not bad, there are no problems with ergonomics. However, you need to make sure that everything works. Sometimes in the cars on this platform PQ25 climbed not very straight hands, which held not very original scanner to activate or customize something. Sometimes it was successful, sometimes not. Therefore, everything should work, from turn indicators and fog lights to interior lighting. Theoretically, this generation of Polo had a lot of motors, even diesel modifications were sold in Europe. But in our secondary market there is no big choice, and in ads almost all cars are offered with a gasoline motor with 85 horsepower, and much rarer Polo with motors with 105 horsepower. Diesel cars, 1.2 liters, 75 horsepower, at the moment of writing the material on sale were only 2 pieces, we will not consider them, hardly. Anyone will want to buy somehow brought to us exotics with a very rare diesel. Therefore, let's return to 1.4-liter motor with 85 horsepower. Almost all of fifth Polo on our market is offered with it. It is a 16-valve motor CGGB with distributed injection and a belt in the timing. It is atmospheric and is much simpler than more modern motors of EA211 series, especially with direct injection. However, it can start eating oil quite early. But since there is no choice, you will have to buy a car with such an engine. And there is nothing terrible in it. At good service it will serve its 1,200 to 250 kilometers. The motor with power of 105 HP is not very successful turbocharged 1.2-liter CBZB with direct injection and chain timing, the resource of which is unpredictable. You should not buy Polo with it, but there are few such cars on sale. What the car was not lucky with was automatic gearboxes. The cars with the most popular 85 horsepower engine used a dry 7-speed robot DQ200. Its problems have been known for a long time: low resource of clutches, malfunctions of its drive, breakdowns of mechatronic. In general, a full set. However, all this can be repaired now, albeit for a lot of money. Mechanical boxes MQ200 and MQ250 are much more predictable, though they hardly survive annealing at traffic lights, they have a weak differential. But with not the most powerful motors on Polo they live for a long time. There are almost equal numbers of cars with 85 horsepower engines with robots and mechanics on the aftermarket, so there is a choice. Basically, with $1.5 million in your pocket, there is always a choice. Like Solaris, only better, Kia Rio X line we have almost no selection without Koreans. And it is not accidental, because it is difficult to imagine life without them nowadays. They were sold in very large circulations. In their time, and most likely, deservedly. Budget models of Hyundai and Kia were successful, not too terrible in appearance, reliable enough and even comfortable. That's why Kia Rio X line will be in our list. By and large, it is a shortened and raised version of the usual sedan Kia Rio of the 4th generation. Like all budget cars, the paintwork of the car is not outstanding. The situation is aggravated by the plastic bodywork. Chips and scuffs appear on this car even by themselves, and what can happen there? Under plastic covers on the arches, only God knows. Taking into account that the cars are already 5-6 years old, you can expect chips on the roof. And if on galvanized metal these chips do not rust for a long time, on the roof they quickly turn into rust, and it is unpleasant. The interior of the car is well assembled and, as a rule, well equipped, within reasonable limits for B-class. Materials used, of course, are inexpensive, but more resistant to wear and tear than in the first Solaris and Rio. The attentive can try to determine the mileage by the steering wheel. It does not hide the age here and often looks worse than other interior details. The choice of motors is limited to 2 variants, 1.4-liter G4LC, 100 horsepower, and 1.6-liter G4FG, 123 horsepower. These are motors of different families, and the former is the newer. It doesn't have the same danger of fouling the cylinders with crumbs from the crumbling catalytic converter that is left on the 1.6-liter motor. But it does not mean that this trouble will inevitably happen to 123 horsepower engine if you feed it with good gasoline. Change oil in time and periodically check the catalytic converter. Nothing terrible will happen to it. Well, and if there are some fears, you can safely choose the younger motor. With it the car goes not so badly, as it is possible to expect from 100 horses. However, on the secondary market there are much less copies with this unit than with 1.6-liter one. There is no need to be afraid of 2-pedal cars either. The 6-speed automatic A6GF1 is not too quick-witted, but it serves for a very long time. The main thing is to change oil in time. Early versions of it could sometimes let down on cars of 2014 to 2015 years of release, but our budget gives us an opportunity to choose. Cars of 2018 to 2019 years, and by this time the box has no childish diseases left. Well, if you want a manual please, there are no problems with it. X-Line will definitely suit those who does not suffer from complexes, is not afraid to be like a cab driver and knows how to count money. Superb for modest, Skoda Fabia 2. Frankly speaking, nobody expected that the second Fabia will get into the selection of cars, for which more than 1 million rubles are asked now. Although Rio was not expected there and a lot of other things. But the truth is that restyled second-generation Fabias of the 2010 to 2014 model years are now estimated at 1.5 million, so let's see them too. Exterior inspection is required to be carried out carefully. After all, the cars are more than 10 years old. Rusty chips on the roof, the edge of the hood, the bottom of the doors, all this is a reason to look at another option or at least to bargain well. But the replaced windshield may not bother you, it is not necessarily after the accident. The reason can be in the fact that Fabia's windows are soft, they quickly wore out, and they were often replaced. The interior of this car is bigger than it may seem from the outside. Of course, there is no space of Mercedes S-Class in it, but it is possible to drive in Fabia with 4 people. Besides, this hatchback pleases with successful ergonomics and organization of space, so the interior is a strong point of the car. It is true, without good noise insulation, but for B-Class it is quite at the level. The choice of motors here, too, comes down to 2 options, 1.4-litre CGGB, 86 horsepower, and 1.6-litre CFNA, 105 horsepower. We have already told about the first one in the section about Volkswagen Polo, so we will not repeat ourselves. Well, and CFNA, well known to us motor of EA111 family with distributed injection and chain timing. We do not recommend to take the car with it, not the most successful unit, and on its background a weak 1.4-litre engine looks preferable. Sometimes there are Fabias with 1.2-litre CGPA engine with an output of 70 horsepower, but it is better to stay away from such cars. It is the motor of the same series EA111, as well as 1.6-litre one, with exactly the same problems, but they occur here more often than on the larger motor. Of course, the only classic automatic transmission, which was found on Fabia, 6-speed AQ250, aka 9G, makes us look towards the 1.6-litre engine. But do not be deceived, the resource of this box is rather limited and repair is unreasonably expensive. Taking into account the mileage of 10-year-old cars, it is possible to say that repair of this automatic transmission is almost inevitable. Add here not the most successful motor, and it will turn out that it is possible to cram so much money into this automobile, as in cash it cannot fit even theoretically. In practice, it can. Other boxes, the same as in Volkswagen Polo, considered above, dry 7-speed robot DQ200 and mechanical 5-speed MQ200. Here, too, you cannot repeat anything. Don't want to invest too much money in this car. Take Fabia with a motor 1.4 litres, 86 horsepower, and a manual. There are such configurations and there are quite a lot of them. All other variants may disappoint with the cost of repairs. In conclusion, when selecting a B-Class hatchback within a budget of 1.5 million rubles, it's essential to focus on the differences in transmission options, as the engines are often quite similar. Consider your driving style and preferences, whether you prioritize fuel efficiency, responsiveness, or ease of use. By weighing these factors and conducting thorough research, you can find a hatchback that not only meets your needs but also offers great value for your investment. Happy car hunting!